100 miles behind him, and Sherman is burning there's no way Hood's going to catch him. So they decide that Hood is going to invade Nashville, invade Tennessee, liberate Nashville, move on up into Kentucky, and then possibly go to the aid of Lee, who's bottled up outside of Richmond. And what that would do is that would cause Sherman to have to come back because there were no more Federal troops of any numbers around. So Hood takes off from Florence, Alabama, and he's heading north to Nashville. George Thomas in Nashville, who's the overall commander in Nashville, he's only got about 10 or 15,000 quartermasters in Nashville, and really the only combat troops he has is under the command of John Schofield, and he's in Pulaski, Tennessee. So here's Hood in Florence, Alabama, here's Schofield in Pulaski, Tennessee, and here's Nashville. So Hood takes off, and he's wanting to cut off Schofield before he gets to Nashville. Schofield finds out about it, and he starts racing for Nashville. So they're both racing for Nashville. Hood catches up to Schofield in Columbia, Tennessee, national headquarters location. Schofield is dug in and fortified, and Hood decides, rather than attack Schofield head-on, which is his reputation, Hood decides he's going to take 2 of his 3 Army Corps, and he's going to cross the river and try to get behind Schofield. So he leaves 1 corps in Columbia and all of his artillery as a diversion and flanks Schofield to the north, and he ends up at Spring Hill. Schofield finds out about the flank a little bit later, but he's got to be careful as he withdraws because he's got Stephen D. Lee's corps and 100 guns to worry about. So Schofield and 25,000 troops start marching up the road toward Nashville. Hood and the 2 corps get to Spring Hill, and this is where the mess starts. They get there just before dark, and they align and they do some attacking, and there's some advanced troops there, some Yankee troops. I won't get into all that. But what happens is Hood orders, according to Hood, in his memoirs, Hood says, I gave Frank Cheatham repeated orders to block the road. Hood prints that in his memoirs, but Hood dies even before they're published. So Hood dies in 1879. His memoirs are published in 1880. And he says that he gave Cheatham these orders, and Cheatham did not follow the orders. Well, Cheatham has the advantage and the luxury of outliving Hood. So if you all have any rivals in your life, if you outlive them, I'll guarantee you history is going to smile on you, because you're going to be able to say what you say and nobody's going to say anything about it. So in Hood's memoir, he only gives 1 bit of evidence. James Ratchford, a member of his staff, said, I took orders to Cheatham and gave the orders for Cheatham to attack the road, and Cheatham says, I never got him. There's another witness who was another staff member of Hood who said, not only did I send orders to Cheatham, but so did my colleagues Major Blanton and Major Hamilton. Historians have always said these 2 guys are staff members of Hood, so they were just, they're lying to help their old boss, and so Cheatham denied it, and history has sided with Cheatham until now. Here is a letter. This is a letter from W. Old to Hood, and Old says, I got to read you the first paragraph. It doesn't have anything to do with Spring Hill. It's kind of funny. This is real good This is the best handwriting of all, and it's even hard to read. This one says, September 10th, blah, blah, blah. My dear sir, I met this morning with Mr. E.L. Martin, who was an aide-de-camp of General Edward Johnson at Nashville. W. Old was also a major, and he was on Ed Johnson's staff. So he is talking about E.L. Martin. He and E.L. Martin are both majors, and they're on Ed Johnson's staff. Ed Johnson was captured at Nashville. Ed Johnson at Nashville. I had a conversation with him in regard to the cause of the general's capture. He says the general had left his horse with a courier and not with a staff officer, and that the courier took flight and left with the general's horse. So now we know how Ed Johnson got captured. Somebody stole his horse during the retreat. Blah, blah, blah. Here's the important part. In regard to the attack at Spring Hill, Mr. Martin says that General Johnson did go to General Cheatham and beg, underline, or wherever that is, you all following that along? Beg him to attack with his division, stating that he did not even require any support, but that General Cheatham refused, stating finally he was opposed to night attacks. Mr. Martin says he was present. If you wish to correspond with him, his address. There was no letter to or from Martin in there. So here is a guy who is not a member of Hood's staff, who says Cheatham, now this is now like the fifth or the sixth person that has said that Frank Cheatham said he didn't like night attacks. And, you know, I even went and read Cheatham's official report at Chickamauga, and he was involved in a night attack at Chickamauga, and it didn't go. Let me read this to you. It's important. It corroborates Old and Ratchford at what happened at Spring Hill, and it throws in another bit of a bombshell. People familiar with Patrick Claiborne, familiar with how he died and where he died, and supposedly what was going on in his mind when he died. The interpretation was that Hood blamed him for, he had heard that Hood blamed him for Spring Hill the night before. He got mad that his honor had been challenged by his commanding general, and that he decided, by God, I'm going to show General Hood that I am, wasn't to blame, and in what I've heard, angry. He was mad at Hood, and he kind of lost control, and he charged up, and he got killed. Well, not according to other people. Stephen D. Lee, to Hood, blah, 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 blah. I met A.P. Stewart at Columbus about 6 weeks ago and propounded, why was no battle delivered at Spring Hill? He replied in substance that Cheatham and Cleburne determined it was not best to bring on an engagement at night. He said he heard or believed that Cleburne regretted it immediately afterwards, which would have been the next morning when they discovered that the Yankees had gone, and said no such weight should be on his mind for similar cause again, which is a 19th century way of saying it ain't going to happen again, and in that feeling lost his life at Franklin soon thereafter. So according to A.P. Stewart, Cleburne and Cheatham decided we better not attack at night, they're not going anywhere. The next morning, Cleburne wakes up and thinks, oh my God, they're gone, and I had something to do with it. I either agreed with Cheatham or whatever. And basically what Patrick Cleburne did, according to this, it was basically suicide by Yankee the next morning, trying to redeem himself. That what was going on in Cleburne's mind wasn't, I'm mad at Hood and I'm going to show him that I'm a great fighter. It was, I'm responsible for this and I'm going to do my best to make it work out. So was it regret? Was it remorse? Or was it regret? So this is very important, and the standard interpretation of what Cleburne was thinking when he was charging the works at Franklin now has to be totally reconsidered according to A.P. Stewart.